our 2025 conference is happening soon. It is 1st October. It's in Crown Plaza, Dublin Airport. So if you haven't registered it, please feel free to either email or message me, contact me, or anyone in our team. This year's theme is, of course, artificial intelligence. A quick thank you, as I mentioned, we are a non-profit community. There are these organizations support us in any way they can. Business Map, these are 4 organizations: Business Map, Change Angels, Women in Technology and Science in Ireland, and Work Matters, where I am from. Thank you, a big thanks for all these organizations. Very quickly, we would it's this if you find these meetups and newsletters or any of these events helpful and not helpful to you, please feel free to share your love. There is the QR code if you would like to donate. If you would like any small donation helps. Dave is our expert for today. I'll have already taken much time. I'll not take much time here. Dave will be talking about how artificial intelligence and agile they are combining with each other. I had a pleasure of talking with Dave this week, and one thing which really stood out to me was how his practical outlook, especially in this case. I asked him, what do you see? How is artificial intelligence and AI and technologies is affecting all these roles, Scrum Masters, product owners, and all these roles associated with with Agile. To that, he said, and which really stuck to me, was that we have to accept the fact that tools like ChatGPT and Lovable, these tools will become are about to become norm, and we should accept using it like we are using PowerPoint and Word and all these things today. And that's something practical and that we should all be aware of, right? So without further ado, Dave, I'll hand it over to you. Thank you very much.
Thanks a lot, DJ. Thanks for the introduction. And thanks everyone for coming along. It's nice to see some familiar names, some familiar faces. And I really appreciate you coming on a sunny evening. So I know it's not often we get these, but thank you very much for carving out some time to talk to me. The focus of this talk is it's not going to be very theory heavy or very sort of educational. This is very much a practical talk where I'm going to try and put a lot of things in your hands that I hope you'll run off with, give it a try, and hopefully start your own learning journey with AI. It's a good sort of starter for 10, I hope, but it's not an ultra polished talk. It's going to be a lot more like rock and roll, heavy metal type stuff. So if you're expecting something ultra polished and slick, this is not going to be the talk for you. It might be the time to pull the cord now, but I still think there's going to be a lot of useful stuff in here for you guys. So let's kick off. A little bit of signposting. We're going to talk about some tools and the major issue that I think a lot of us are running into. Some AI apps for delivery-focused folks like us, then going beyond the basics of that. I've got a lot of free stuff that I want to give away, and then hopefully we'll have some time at the end for some questions, and hopefully I can provide some useful answers. So, starting off with the tools, there are now thousands and thousands and thousands of tools, and they can do anything and everything: writing, video, image, text-to-speech, speech-to-text, chatbots. The major issue I've seen, or the biggest issue I've seen, is there aren't tons of really good or really useful Agile delivery use cases with these. You can sort of corner them or crowbar them in some ways, but there aren't many off the shelf that can really make a difference to you in your day-to-day work. And it was at this point that I stumbled across a tool called AWS Party Rock. I'd be interested, has anyone in the chat heard of this? Has anyone given this a try before? I was hoping by now this would start to get more popular, but it still seems no one's really tried it yet. Fingers crossed I can convince you guys to give it a go. But the way to think of Party Rock is it's a bit like an LLM, but it's on steroids. What it'll do is it'll take a prompt from you, you ask it for something, some black magic happens in the Amazon Bedrock foundational models, and then it gives you back an application that's made of AI-powered widgets. A little bit like a mosaic comes back to you. I've got 8 applications that I want to walk through that I built in Party Rock, but just to set the scene, I'll give you a quick example just to give you an idea of how Party Rock works. I'll apologize up front. I wasn't brave enough to do a live demo, but I'm hoping the slides will give you a bit of a feel for how this all fits together. So the first application that I've tried to build was something that's very close to my heart. It's around Sunderland AFC, and it was a bet builder for Sunderland AFC, something to help me make my bets at the weekend on the best football team in the country. And this will give you a good flavor on how this application and the workflow fits together. So we start by giving it a prompt. And what I've asked for here is an application that can create 3 bets that I can place on the next Sunderland AFC football game. The app should take in the SAFC lineup and the opposition team lineup, and then based on that, propose 3 individual bets I can make on the game. So fairly straightforward. I'll walk through that in a little bit more detail in just a second, but this is what it sort of looked like. So it takes a couple of inputs, the Sunderland AFC team, and this time it was Swansea who we were playing. And it spits back 3 different bets that I could make. So bet on Sunderland to score first, but then draw or lose. It clearly knows Sunderland very well. Bet on over 2.5 goals. Both teams have attacking talent. Very good. And then bet on a goal to be scored from a header with Bellingham and Cabango's aerial presence. A headed goal seems likely. And I actually followed this through and I put it on. And Party Rock actually got 2 out of 3 of those right, which was really good. So if you want to make some money, this could be a good way to do it. This is not financial advice, to be perfectly clear. I think this was more luck than skill, but this is just to show the mechanism. The big thing I want to sort of draw your attention to is in the prompt I've given it the overall goal, but then I've also tried to define quite clearly what the input I'm going to give and the output I expect back is. That helps Party Rock not only give you what you're asking for, but select the appropriate AI-powered widgets to give you back that output. So you might ask for things like image generation, for text, for charts. It can then more accurately select the widgets that you need to get the outputs that you're looking for. So that's sort of the example, the little bit of a fun one to kick us off. But now we'll go into a bit more of Agile territory. So the first one that a lot of people are very familiar with, is using LLMs and AI-powered tools as a personal coach or mentor. And this first one was a little bit like that. So the prompt I've hit this with is, I'd like an application I can use for my work problems and challenges. I work as a Scrum Master, and I'd like an app where I can add a challenge I'm going through and be given back 3 separate options, strategies, or experiments to fix the problem. So again, we get an input box, and I've given a fairly standard challenge that a lot of Scrum Masters go through. My daily Scrum consistently runs over the 15-minute time box. What can I do to fix that? And we get back 3 different solutions that we can try. Enforce the time box and make the timer visible. Encourage team members to comment on the top priorities and limit contributions to 2 or 3 sentences. Eliminate open discussions or tangents. If discussions consistently go longer, note topics and schedule follow-ups. Some of this may seem a little bit old hat, but on the whole, those 3 are not bad starters for 10 for ways that you could look to address this problem. And I think of this as sort of the Jose Mourinho application, sort of tactics on demand. You tell it the problem, it gives you some ideas for how to fix that problem. That's fairly straightforward. We can't go much deeper than that. So the next one, which is a little bit more flavored and colorful, was a metric selector. So I think it was last year now, metrics were sort of flavor in the month in the LinkedIn Scrum and Agile communities. And I thought, can we create an application to help people select effective metrics to diagnose team performance? So the prompt I went for this time was, create an app I can use to add a metrics-based lens to my Agile team's performance. Lenses can range from Scrum values to Agile Manifesto to Dora metrics to Days Since Last metrics and beyond. I'll describe the team, the goals, the environment, and I'd like you to send back 2 different but appropriate collections of metrics I can use to shed light on team performance and effectiveness. This is a little bit more meaty, but we'll step through it step by step. So the input I'm going to give it is a description of the team, and I've given a fictional example here of a team that's developing a cutting-edge data platform with artificial intelligence capabilities, leveraging the latest and greatest in all things engineering, data science, and data analysis. Team are leaning heavily on OpenAI and cloud-based tooling and are currently in the early phases of shaping up what the product will look like at the end of the first stage. The team are supplied by a software consultancy and are working for a client in the retail banking sector. So I'm trying to give it quite a bit of context there on who we are, what we're doing, and what our goals look like. It'll take that input now, and what it'll do is it'll spit back those 2 suites of metrics that I asked for. And at first glance, this isn't bad. A lot of this stuff's as popular. A lot of this stuff is stuff that you'll see bounced around on the communities in LinkedIn and other places like here. Just to draw your attention to some of the good stuff that's in here. So I've color coded these slightly, but some of the orange ones are coming from suites like flow metrics. So we've got cycle time and lead time, good indicators to look at. We've got stuff in there from DORA metrics, things like release frequency, code contributions, deployment frequencies. Again, very good. And stuff that you could have pulled straight from the Agile Manifesto, things like technical debt management, retrospective action item completion, customer satisfaction. These are pretty good. For 2 minutes worth of work, we've got back a couple of suites straight away that can give us some value and give us a good indication on how our team's performing. However, some of the eagle-eyed among you have probably noticed that it isn't all perfect, and I'd also like to highlight some other ones in here. So we've also got metrics that we're being asked to look at for things like velocity, for things like lines of code, story points completed per engineer, and test coverage. Anyone with experience probably knows these are not the best metrics to be looking at to get a gauge on your team's performance. So this is sort of one of my sort of first warnings with AI. You can ask it for stuff and it'll give you stuff. It doesn't necessarily mean it's going to be good stuff. You still need to give it that supervisory layer over the top and put it through the lens of your experience and your skills to make sure it's really helping you. Try as best you can not to outsource all of your thinking to the AI tool. Use it as an enabler, not as a replacement. Okay, that's metric selector in the bag. So the third application I worked on was one, again, very close to my heart, a retrospective creator. I've created all kinds of themed retrospectives, and I wondered, could we use AI to outsource some of that heavy lifting for us? So this time I've asked for an application to help me create retrospective templates. My team hold regular retros, and I'd like to supply a theme for the session and get back a collection of creative and engaging discussion prompts for use in the session. Fairly good. And the first sort of theme that came to mind was a personal hero of mine. I thought, what would be my idea of a perfect retrospective? It would be an Arnold Schwarzenegger themed one. And this is the theme that I put into this application. And very quickly, it gives you back 4 creative and engaging prompts for a retrospective with an Arnold Schwarzenegger theme. These are all pretty good. I think the final prompt is probably my favorite. And this reads, Arnold liked to use visualization to motivate himself. Close your eyes and visualize Arnold congratulating us on a job well done. What words of encouragement does he give? For me, as a bodybuilding fanatic and someone who absolutely idolizes Arnold, if I was to close my eyes and open them in a retrospective and have Arnold congratulating me for a job well done, this would just be a dream come true. So absolutely love this one. Again, very quick way to spin up some useful and engaging material that you can leverage within your teams and your workflows. Okay, application number 4. And this is more of a template of the types of applications that you can build and leverage within Party Rock. Try not to get hung up on the fact that I'm asking it for a status report here. This could be any sort of templated documentation or any templated collateral that you need to create as part of your role. I'm just using the status report as an easy example for us to hook into here. So the prompt I've given this time is, I work in a software delivery team and I'd like an application to help me fill out a weekly status report. I'll give you a high-level summary of my week, and what I'll get back from you are any relevant points for the project overview and risks, issues, assumptions, and dependency sections of my report. So very straightforwardly, I'm going to give it a summary of what my project's doing. I'm going to get back an overview and then some risks, assumptions, issues, and dependencies. Typical RAID log stuff, very familiar to anyone who's fulfilled that project manager accountability before. So again, we're going to give that same fictional example, but I want to touch on something slightly different before we skip over the input. So this is going to be a very similar sort of example to the team that we described before, but instead of typing this out this time, what I'd encourage you to experiment with is talking to the AI using natural language. Just removing that physical barrier of you having to have hands on the keyboard and think about what you're typing as well as what you're trying to do puts a bit of an artificial barrier in terms of what you can leverage the AI to do and how much context you can load in there. The more that you practice talking to the AI, there's 2 main benefits. Number 1, you'll be able to talk more directly, quickly, efficiently, swiftly, and download that context into the AI much quicker than you can by typing out, especially longer and longer prompts. But number 2, you'll very quickly develop a pattern where you're able to understand what information is really relevant to the AI, what information sends it down rabbit holes and what information you should probably disregard because it'll just confuse the AI overall. So turning on your microphone and speaking to it instead of typing out these prompts is a really good way to upskill yourself and make sure that you can get more effective results from your interactions with these LLM-powered tools. Okay, we'll step forward. So we've given an example of a team that we're working on. We've given some highlights. We're talking about a few different things that we've got there. And a second nice little add-on to Party Rock is we can now upload document stacks as templates. And this is really good for things like status reports. Typically, if you work in a consultancy or a consultant org of some description, even if you're a solo contractor, you'll typically have a list of templates for things like status reports that will be sat on the shelf that you'll just fill in at the end of the week. By giving these to AIs, you're again giving it a richer sense of context around what it is that you're asking for, and you're giving it more and more chance to give you the answer that you need or an answer that's going to be helpful to you to complete the task you want to complete. The way I think about this, when we give sort of attachments and additional context to AI, is instead of this being a closed book exam where we give it one question and hope it gets it right, we're turning that exam from a closed book exam into an open book exam. We're giving it lots of different stuff to refer to that it can now pull into its answers to help us get where we want to get to. So that's really helpful as well. Another nice thing you can do, let's imagine that we've got this application and we've been filling in status reports for 4 or 5 weeks. If we can not only give it the template, but also give it the historical examples of these status reports that we've given, AI is very good at drawing out hidden trends and narratives within data and within templates like status reports to bring things to your attention that you may have missed. So another prompt you could hit it with here, instead of just asking it to fill things out, you could give it your previous 5 status reports and say, how does this project look to be trending? Is there anything that I'm missing that I should pay attention to? Is there anything that's going really well that I'm not shouting about? And AI can help you to surface some of those hidden themes and those hidden trends that are going on beneath the surface. Okay, let's keep stepping forward. So we've given a description of our project. We've given a template of the status report that we want to fill in. And quickly we'll get back something that looks a little bit like this. We'll have sections for a project overview that comes back, some relevant risks, issues, assumptions, and dependencies that it's pulled out. And this can really be a time saver for anyone who's filling in these type of weekly or monthly sort of collateral pieces to feed up the chain or to spread within an organization. Again, they're not always perfect, but these are a really good time saver. And what I find when it comes to writing out, especially things like project overviews, which are slightly more creative than risks, issues, and assumptions, just getting that ball rolling really helps to me to shorten the time horizon to getting it out the door. So having something to work on and whittle away at is really helpful for me. Final point on this one. As I said, I've picked out a status report here, but try not to get hung up on that. This is absolutely not intended to be just a status report or application. You can adapt this to any sort of consistent document, template, or piece of collateral that you need to create, to things like sprint reports and things like quarterly business updates. Let this act as a bit of a template job for you to play around with and pull in the relevant elements and get rid of the trash. And hopefully you'll be able to leverage that for a little bit of value and speed you up in your day-to-day role. Okay, that's application number 4. Application number 5. So again, another sort of theme that was doing the rounds last year in the LinkedIn Scrum community was around sprint goals. I'm a very, very firm believer that sprint goals are probably the most criminally underrated element of the framework, and without them, a lot of it starts to fall apart. So I thought, could we create an application that could help people create sprint goals more effectively and embed that as a good habit within Scrum teams? What I've done this time is the prompt on the left is a little bit longer, but I'll summarize it for you slightly. So I've asked for an application that creates sprint goals for my team. What this application will do is take in a selection of sprint backlog items, and then from those create 3 separate sprint goals. And these will be examples that I can choose from. And I've asked for 3 separate formats. I've asked for the Roman Pitchler template format, where we start with a goal. We then define the method of how we're going to achieve that goal, and then we define some metrics that will tell us if we've achieved the goal or not. The second example I asked for was the feature advantage benefit template. So we'll ask for a feature, what from the stakeholder's perspective are we going to build, the advantage, highlight how and what's going to make that feature special, and then the benefit, the why of why we're doing this, what's the benefit that we're going to confer to that user by building this feature. And the final one's a very quick and dirty one, the newspaper headline format. So imagine our sprints going to be reported on in a fortnight's time in the news. What would the headline look for this if we achieve what we want to achieve? That becomes the sprint goal. So what we can do here is we'll get an input box that looks a little bit like this. We can type these out if we want to, but what you can also do is either capture these in a notepad file or do an export from Jira, Azure DevOps, whatever your PPM tool of choice is, and either attach those or type those into the input for this. And what we'll get back is a collection of sprint goals that will then either act as a discussion starter within the team to talk about which goal should we go for here, or we can then sort of chip away at these, combine them, look to whittle something out of here that's particularly useful. Before we move on to another application, though, I've made a bit of a fundamental mistake there. Anyone who's working in a Scrum team, I would hope you can identify what was wrong with that application. Can anyone tell me the mistake I've made there? Think about how I derived the sprint goal. Okay, so go ahead. I'll give someone one chance.
Yeah, I was going to say you did it from items from the backlog. That's
Bingo.
typically not a standard way of doing it.
Bingo. I've got this the wrong way around. So what I've done here is taken a selection of sprint backlog items, then derived an arbitrary sprint goal from them, which probably isn't the best way to get the most value from either your backlog prioritization activities or leveraging Scrum generally. What we should probably do is give the application the full backlog along with the product goal, and then say, this is everything that we've potentially got to work on. This is the product goal that we're aiming at. What are the sprint backlog goals that would make sense to move us closer to this overarching product goal? The good news is it's very simple to change that, and we have done. So this time, instead of taking in the sprint goals, it takes in product backlog items, and it also takes in the current product goal. And then it spits back sprint goals that could move us meaningfully forward towards that product goal. It looks a little bit more like this. So we give it some stories for input. We give it the product goal. We want to make loads of money. And then off the back of that, we get the same three formats, but now we can pick from sprint goals that are maybe going to become what becomes the guide for pulling in the relevant stories. The nice part about this is we've outsourced that to the application as well. Not only does it then create sprint goals, which are more stepping stones towards the product goal, it can make recommendations on which individual stories are best supporting this goal for the sprint, which will then move us towards the goal for the product. So this is much more of an accurate representation of how Scrum should be used in the wild. And this application can also be a bit of an education piece for people to really get to grips with the framework and leverage it correctly. So that's application number 5. Application number 6, a checklist creator. So when I talk to Agile folks, there's sometimes a bit of an allergic reaction to checklists. And I often say one of the best tools I've got in my sort of first 30 days in a role, especially as a delivery role like a project manager, Scrum Master, Agile coach, is a checklist. Because this helps me to gauge where this team's at, where maybe the problems are, and where I can best direct my attention for those first 30 days to get off to a good start. And I wanted an application that I could use to help me sort of formulate what a good checklist could look like for different teams that I might end up working with. So in this example, I've asked for an application that I can use when joining a new team to assess the level of agility and understand where I can direct my efforts as a Scrum Master to improve effectiveness and deliver more value. The application takes some input describing the team and environment and then gives me back a checklist style response that I can use in the team. Fairly straightforward. We've given it the same team description as we did before, with the team working on a cutting edge data platform, OpenAI tooling, cloud-based tooling, working in for a software consultancy in the retail banking sector. Exactly the same example as before. It'll take that input, and what it'll give us back is a checklist that looks a little bit like this. So it's an assessment checklist where we can, or it does an assessment of the team profile, I should say. And some of the risks or areas of attention it identifies: the team's developing a cutting-edge data platform, which indicates they're likely adopting new technologies. This can be great for innovation, but may also indicate a steep learning curve. Very legitimate concern, very legitimate risk, I would say. The product vision is still shaping up in the early stages. The scope should be understood with the client to prevent shifting priorities from impacting throughput. Frequent check-ins on the roadmap are advised. Again, that sounds like a sensible recommendation to me. Not always going to be perfect, but this is a really good starter for 10 for where your attention should be and what you can look into in your early days within the team to figure out where they're at and where you can really help. And the nice bolt-on that comes with it is this, which is a bit of an improvement plan. So you've got a checklist for things to look at. And then in the event that you need to give your attention there, this application also gives you some ideas for how you could improve that if you find that this is indeed a place where you need to make some improvements. So clearly defining the product vision, scope, and roadmap with the client to align on priorities and prevent shifting goals from impacting throughput. Really good place to start. And again, these are never going to be perfect, but these are really good for getting the ball rolling and giving you a little bit of preparation on demand. You don't need to be up into the early hours of the morning the week before that you're due to start this project. You can outsource a lot of that sort of early prep work to AI and then just pick from the bits that are useful. Hopefully that's one that could be leveraged to save you some time and effort. Okay, stepping forward. Application number 7, working with product owners. So this is, again, a piece of the Scrum framework that I think is underrated and is a little bit underserved in the community. I think it's very easy for Scrum Masters to fall into the trap of working with their individual teams and forget that their responsibilities to the organization and the PO still exist. And I thought, can we start to use some of this tooling to build some bridges there and make those sort of responsibilities a little bit more accessible and automatic for people working in Scrum and Agile roles. So what I've asked for this time is an app that helps me to discuss product improvements with my product owner colleagues. This application takes in a description of the product and also takes in an area that we are looking to improve in the product. So this could be things like creating a freemium offering, creating more aha moments within the customer base, increasing usability, increasing stickiness, driving sales, creating virality. Those are all good examples of things that we'll look to sort of drive through as a product person. What the app will then do is output some thoughts and ideas for how to improve the focus area in the context of the product that I've described. This is getting a little bit theoretical now, but hopefully this example will bring it home. If anyone uses Miro, this was sort of the test case that I used for this. So what I did was went to the Miro website and took a bit of a description of Miro as a tool and plugged that in as the product description. And the focus area I've asked the application to look at is creating a freemium offering of the product to increase user base and engagement. Anyone who uses Miro probably already knows they've already got a freemium offering. And what I wanted to do with this experiment or this test was see how true to life the AI's recommendations were in line with what Miro already does, just so it can assess, is it on the same lines? Is it coming up with something totally different or something that maybe is coming way out of left field? So description plugged in, the focus area plugged in, and this is what we got back. So here are some ideas for improving the freemium version of Miro. Offer a limited number of boards for free accounts. Miro does this. Provide access to a subset of templates and widgets in the free version. Miro does this. Allow free users to collaborate with paid users. Miro does this. So this was really pretty good and really pretty accurate in terms of what Miro does in real life. And there's a little bit of a challenge that comes along with this, or a little bit of a, I suppose, something to think about. There's a bit of a question here for me in terms of, did the AI come up with this on its own? Or more likely, it's already been trained on what Miro does and it's sort of adapting based on its pre-existing knowledge. Ultimately, either way, it doesn't really matter, because if it's making it up on its own, it's making good recommendations. Great. If it's doing this because of pre-existing knowledge it's been trained on, great. It already knows what makes a good product in this arena for this type of focus area that we're trying to improve. So while there may be some smoke and mirrors going on here for why it's got the right answers, ultimately, when it comes to developing new or emerging tools, applications, and technology, it's going to give you something useful 9 times out of 10, which I think is the more important thing. And this is really good. So I hope that this is another one that can help you work more effectively with product and product owner type colleagues. And then application number 8, which is the final application that we're going to talk about. Apologies, putting this accent on's really drying my throat out, sorry. So this application builder, if anyone's connected to Michael Lloyd, you've probably seen dysfunction mapping before. I haven't shown him this, and I think he might be a little bit horrified. So this might be our secret for now until I can prove it's any good. So what I've asked this time for is an AI-powered application that can walk through the steps of the dysfunction mapping method and go from a symptom that we notice as an Agilist and take us all the way through to a solution and a measure. For anyone who's not familiar with dysfunction mapping, it's basically a 5-step process. We start by identifying a symptom, so something that we've noticed within our team or organization that's not quite right. And then what we'll do is trace that back to an underlying dysfunction, which could represent a missing Agile or Scrum practice or principle or value that influences that negative outcome. The next step is purpose. And here we describe the purpose or multiple purposes of the missing practice, principle, or idea. Now that we have transparency as what's going on, and we can see in a higher level of transparency why this problem's occurring, we can then start thinking about what a solution could be. And the final step of that is to come up with some sort of measure for that solution to understand, is the solution working? Is it doing nothing, or is it taking us in the wrong direction? And then we know what we need to do next. Again, a little bit theory heavy there, but I think it's helpful to see and set what we're actually trying to drive at here. Step by step, this is fairly straightforward. So I've gone for the same dysfunction or symptom again. The team daily scrum consistently runs over the 15-minute time box. The next step would be the underlying dysfunction. The application cited a lack of focus on the sprint goal. I think that's more or less spot on. In all the teams I've worked with where we're running over the time box, I think a lack of focus is normally the prime culprit. From there, we go to purpose. The sprint goal is a single objective that guides and unites the Scrum team, offering flexibility in how it's achieved while fostering collaboration and focus. That may have been pulled directly from the Scrum guide. That's really good, a really good indication of why the sprint goal is important and what could happen when it's not there. The solution: facilitate discussion and team contributions in relation to the sprint goal, using the session to review progress towards the sprint goal. Again, I think that's a fairly good solution. We should be looking to have those daily Scrum conversations and activities be focused in the context of the sprint goal, not other side of desk or other more detailed discussion points. And then the measure, the number of times a sprint goal runs over the time box in the next sprint, and we expect a downward trend to indicate progress. And again, straight away within 30 seconds, we've now got a full dysfunction map for that one symptom that we identified. And we can very quickly cascade this through multiple symptoms that we identify to get a bit of a feeling for how we can improve things using the dysfunction mapping methodology. Again, I hope that could be a helpful one for anyone joining new teams or who's part of a long-lived team where maybe bad habits have started to creep in and we need to look at how we can improve and change things. Okay, so that's a lot in terms of what is available to you within PartyRock. I'm going to give you access to all of these applications at the end of the talk. You can copy these into your own instance of PartyRock, which is a free AI-powered tool. So please try out the ones I've given you, but more importantly, try and do things for yourself that you can tweak or improve or just start something totally new and see if these can make a difference in your day-to-day role. But I also want to talk about some other areas beyond PartyRock. PartyRock's just one application, and there's now a very rich and fertile breeding ground for AI-powered applications. And I think the more that you can get under your belt and get a feel for, the more effectively you can integrate with these AI tools generally. So going beyond PartyRock, the first thing I want to talk about is being able to talk to your project. So when we work on projects, sprints, product deliveries, we're typically creating a hell of a lot of collateral. That could be Miro boards, that could be PowerPoint decks, that could be images, Excel spreadsheets, Word documents, notepads. All of this is really good, and this starts to build up what I would call the sort of latent knowledge of your project. And what we can do with that is put that into a place, put the AI hat on top of it, and now you can talk to your project as if it's a chatbot or a subject matter expert in your specific endeavor. We can do this in ChatGPT. You'll notice in ChatGPT's interface, you'll get the attachment icon here. And we could just start attaching project documentation here to create a subject matter expert on the project, and then talk to that chatbot and ask it, what am I doing that's wrong? What's going well? How can we improve things? What should my priorities be for the next fortnight? This is a really quick and dirty way to create a really nice catalyst for you to get more effectiveness out the door more quickly. But there is a bit of a concern with this. Does anyone would anyone be nervous about doing this, I suppose? And if you're not, why not? Would be my question. So
Yeah, data.
bingo. The biggest problem with this is ChatGPT's data management policies are very, very opaque. And I'm a firm believer once you give something to ChatGPT, it's not yours anymore. They consider it theirs. So I would only use this method if you're very sure that you've got no problem any of this data making its way into the public domain or becoming publicly available. Luckily, this isn't the only way to do this. There are other cloud-based solutions in Azure with things like bring your own data, which allows you to define much more tight guardrails around what happens to your data, where it resides, where it can be shipped to, what can happen to it. And this gives you a lot more confidence, security, and control in terms of what you can then put into these AI-powered solutions. If you haven't looked at things like this to sort of de-risk what could happen when you're using AI tooling, it really behooves you to get up on this because this is the type of thing that can make selling AI-powered tooling or making a case of bringing AI-powered tooling into your organizations and teams more straightforward. So I'd really encourage you to look into things like this. Moving forward. This is a bit of a strategy for prompting that I talk about a lot, but try and turn your prompting into a bit of a discussion. Especially with novice users, there's a habit to ask a question, get an answer back, and take that answer as gospel. But one strategy I use quite often, especially when I want to get to something creative, complex, or niche, is I try and turn it into more of an interview. So I'll give an LLM a job to do. I'll say, I want you to do X, Y, Z. Ask me as many clarifying questions as you need to build up enough context to create what I'm asking you for. And at minimum, ask me 3 clarifying questions to deepen your understanding. This again, a bit like when I said speaking to the LLMs instead of typing things out. This works both ways. Number one, it helps the LLM get more relevant context to answer the question first time and give you what you're asking for. But number two, the LLM can then coach you around what the relevant information is so that eventually you might not need to ask these questions quite as often. You'll have an instinct for what's important for the LLM to know to achieve the task that you wanted to achieve. Another very useful mechanism to play around with. Next one is around infographics. So I am a really, really big fan of a lot of the image generation stuff that goes on with them. It was DALL-E and Midjourney previously, but ChatGPT's got their own image generation models now, which are fantastic. And one thing that's really good is its ability to create infographics. So one thing you could do is something, a prompt a little bit like this. I want you to create an infographic for a session I have coming up. Here are the details. You've got some choices here. You can then start plugging in or just typing out the details for a session that you've got coming up. But what I would recommend is doing more of the attachment style stuff. And I actually did this for the session that we're running this evening. I gave it the web page for the meetup link that we've got. I gave it a text file with the description and I gave it a picture of me. And this is what it came up with. Again, these are not perfect, but these are really quick, dirty, and engaging ways to create some nice output that can generate attention and get the attention of people within your remit, whether that's getting people to attend a meetup tour like this, getting the attention of senior stakeholders within the organization, or generating buying and engagement for sessions that you want to run within your projects and teams. This is a really nice mechanism to get to grips with and outsource a lot of the creative work that needs to happen in infographic and image creation type stuff. This is one way to use image generation models, but there's quite a few other ones, and I like to use them to boost engagement, especially in retrospective sessions. I'll walk through a few examples that I've got, but let's say, for example, we have a colleague in our team called Dwight, and we want to generate a classic 8-bit avatar for Dwight to use on his Slack and Jira profiles. We can use an image generation model to help us do that. Let's say I want to run a Lego Serious Play virtual session in my team in a Miro board, and I want a Lego-based avatar to do that. I can use an image generation model to help me do that. And let's say I had a person who played for Newcastle United in the 90s and early 2000s who made my life miserable for years, and I want to turn him into a Sunderland fan to get some revenge. I can do that with AI as well. So there's a hell of a lot that's available to you with these image generation models. And I want to walk you through a bit of a worked example now for how this really helps to dial up engagement in your sessions. So I'm a big fan of themed retrospectives. And let's say I've got the Ali Labs leadership team together for a themed retrospective. And the thing we want to run is a Simpsons themed retrospective. This could be anything. But I can use those AI-powered tools to give me avatars for each of these people within the session. And you'd be surprised just by having these and being able to move these around a virtual whiteboard, how much more engagement and how much richer conversation that you get within your sessions. This is a bit of an immediate crowd pleaser, but I think when you leverage it effectively, it really helps to dial up the type of engagement and the conversation that you can get within retrospectives and beyond. So I'd really encourage you to experiment with that and give it a try. As I said, I'm a big fan of retrospectives in the LLM models, and I've done all sorts of other stuff as well, especially around themed sessions. So I've got a couple more examples to show you. Can anyone tell me what this is before I tell you?
Game of Thrones.
Game of Thrones.
Game of Thrones, bingo. That's one half. What's the other half? If I tell you it's a retrospective as well, what retrospective would you think it is? I'll step forward. We've got a 4Ls retrospective with a Game of Thrones theme there, which was thrown together in less than 2 minutes. We've got liked, lacked, learned, longed for. This was created in less than 5 minutes. This is something that you can very quickly leverage again to generate that buy-in in your sessions. And just to give you another similar sort of example, we can do a sailboat retrospective with an office theme. So we can have people like Jim working the sails, harnessing the wind, what's moving us forward. We can have Pam sitting in the sun on the deck, what's making us feel good. We can have Dwight with the anchors, what's holding us back, what's slowing us down. Then we're going to have Michael looking out on the rocks at future risk, what's coming that's going to derail us in future. You'd be very, very surprised how easy it is to get to grips with these and generate them very quickly. And I think for that 5 to 10 minutes of investment before your session, the improved results and engagement that you get make it really worth it. So again, take this as a bit of an experiment, try it out and see how it works in your teams. I think you'll be pleasantly surprised. Okay. Another area I've been experimenting with more and more recently is getting AI-powered applications out of these LLMs. The two big ones are Claude and ChatGPT. I've done all sorts of different things like to-do lists, like Kanban boards, like Pomodoro timing applications. And I've got one that I made earlier, and I want to show you this so I can show you a little bit of what the development flow looks like when I do this with Claude. So what I've asked for here, this was a very early example where I was trying to get to grips with this, and I said, I'm feeling nostalgic. Can you create a Super Mario platform game I can play? This was really good. It gave me a really good example straight away. So we've got the red box in the corner, which is us, and then we can click into here and jump around on the platforms. So that's pretty good. But there's quite a bit missing. No coins, no levels, no win conditions. So we stepped forward, we did a second one, and then I've asked for, can you add coins, a score system, and win conditions when I collect 10 coins? In the second example, we've got that. And I'll just play through again to show you why this was a bit of a cruel example. So Claude's really done a good job here, created the game, added the coins, and given me a lot more to go on in terms of what the game looks like. Importantly, though, I can't get at this last one, which is very cruel. The game hasn't been programmed correctly, and I can't win this game. I can't get at this one in the right-hand side. So again, it's helpful for getting you up and running. It's very rarely going to be a perfect oracle. What we did, though, is we got through a few iterations of that. We got to a final version, and I think this is the one. So we've now got a game that is a little bit more varied. We can go up and down, and we've got a win condition that should be themed to this session. Yep, congratulations, Ali Labs, you win. And this was really good. This doesn't, I do come from a technical background, but I promise you I did absolutely zero coding on this. This was all very much letting the application do what it could, and then I was trying to see what happened from the back of it. One really nice thing, though, as a Scrum Master, I'm sort of directing this site and giving it a bit of a guide in terms of what I wanted to do. But not only is the AI able to do the programming element, aka the developer accountability, it's also able to do some of the product ownership accountability. So it will make recommendations on, do you want to improve the movement in physics? Do you want platform changes? Do you want coin placement changes? Do you want general improvements? So not only are you sort of overseeing the technical work that's happening and giving a supervisory layer there, You can also help the AI make effective product decisions for how to get more value out of the product and what the most important goal to get to next is. So this is really a nice way for you to experiment with and get better at defining those sort of product enhancements. So again, a really nice pattern that I would encourage you guys to experiment with and try out. I'll just come back to the slideshow. Excellent. So that's in terms of LLM powered applications. Next example. Chip is excellent. What it does is it allows you to embed LLM chatbots into things like Miro boards. And I thought this would be a really good use case for creating really contextually relevant training exercises and development exercises. What I've done is I was part of a meetup last year where we talked about the Toyota Improvement Kata. This is basically what the Toyota Improvement Kata looks like. And what I did is I abstracted that into a board here. I've created a Miro board which defines a bit of a goal. We're going to educate people on the Toyota Improvement Kata and get them up to speed. There are 5 characters in here, and each of these characters is powered by a chip embedded LLM chatbot. In a nutshell, the character in the center will direct you to all of the characters around her. And from each of those characters, you'll learn a step of the Toyota Improvement Kata. You then come back to the character in the center at the end to confirm your understanding, and she'll tell you whether or not you've grasped the concepts or whether there's more for you to learn. This is a really nice way for people who do coaching and development activities with teams and community members to outsource a lot of the heavy lifting. You're basically creating non-player characters almost for free and outsourcing all of that to the LLM and just making sure that they can fulfill their core role effectively. Allows them to leverage a little bit of improv. This is available to you as well. There's a QR code that I'll share at the end, but if you can fulfill that exercise, there's a mechanism in there where you can get a micro certification out the back of it. I'll warn you now, this is not going to be a certification that I will put on your CV or on your LinkedIn profile. This won't get you a job. This was very much a theoretical exercise for me to see what the art of the possible was for this sort of training mechanism. But I encourage you to have a look at it and think about how you can adapt this to your use cases and the things that you care about, you coach your teams and colleagues on. One final example, and this is sort of it's been the flavor of the month for what seems like forever now. Vibe coding is very much where it's at now, and I've been experimenting more and more with this with a tool called Lovable. And there's 2 main applications I want to walk you through, but this is very much, I think, going to become very much par for the course in terms of what happens within technology companies and consultancies. So the first example I made again was a bit of a video game. I created a video game called Quest for Scrum Light, which again is a bit of a training game, a serious game almost, where it walks you through the Scrum values, educates you on why they're important, and then gives you quizzes to confirm your understanding and just illustrate that you've sort of grasped the concepts of why Scrum values are important, what they are, and how you can propagate those within your teams. There's character select. Each character's got their own unique abilities. There are quizzes at the end of every level to confirm your understanding and make sure that you're taking in the content. There's platform style levels at the end of every level as well. And it culminates in a certificate. Again, this is not a certificate that's going to get you a job or secure you any interviews, but it's, again, a bit of fun and I hope a helpful mechanism for you to understand how you can adapt your training into these serious game ideas. Another nice example, the one big drawback of LLMs is they're not very good at maths and mathematic problems. They can't really count. And what I mean by that is they're not AI in the way that most people think of them as. They're sort of making probabilistic bets on what the next most important word is to spit out to you. That means that they aren't really good at doing things like functional programming or solving mathematical problems. But by doing things like vibe coding, getting the LLMs to create software that's very good at mathematics, you can overcome those problems. And one application that's a bit more relevant to Agilists, especially Kanban folks, are things like Monte Carlo simulators. So using Lovable, I was able to create a Monte Carlo forecasting tool. It works in 2 ways. We can ask it when will it be done based on historical throughput, or we can ask how much can we get done by when, again using historical throughput. It asks for all the key pieces of data. So what does your historical throughput look like? How many backlog items do you have? How many days do you work in a week? And how many simulation runs should we do? And then we can get out some useful charts and collateral like this to give us confidence intervals on where we think we'll land based on how much we've got in our backlog and how we've performed previously. And just to round out the example, we can instead ask it how much can we get done by when. Again, it takes in all the relevant data points around historical cycle times, target date, simulation runs. And then we can get very similar visuals to show our confidence intervals for how many items we think we can get through by which date. This was a bit of a revelation for me because I've seen all sorts of people do all sorts of things in Excel files using macros. I love Excel. I think it's the best piece of software ever written, but Excel macros, every organization I work at now has an allergic reaction to them because they are so exploitable. Using tools like this gives you a lot more security and means that you can spin stuff up on the fly if those macros should ever fail you. So again, I hope that this could be a useful example for you to get a little bit of a flavor for what's possible and ultimately carry this on and experiment yourself with what else you could do. Okay, this does come with a bit of a warning. As I say, I come from a bit of a technical background, which really helps, but for novice programmers and people who are new to the programming scene, there are a hell of a lot of warnings, a hell of a lot of memes, and to be honest, all of them are true. Vibe coding in some ways is vulnerability as a service. You're really asking for trouble if you are going to outsource all of your thinking around the program into the vibe coding tool of your choice. It would really behoove you if you want to become that expert level vibe coder / AI level programmer to learn some of the basics. I'm a very firm believer that these are great tools, but to really make them sing, they need to be in the hands of experienced programmers for me. The good news is that situation won't last forever. The bar to entry will still keep coming down and down and down. But I think you can accelerate your learning and accelerate the effectiveness you can get out of these tools by getting to grips with some of those basics as well and meet the AI in the middle a little bit. I hope that makes sense. If anyone's got any questions on that, I can take them at the end or after the session. But I'll just finish this off now because we've got about 1 minute left. So if you want to learn any more, I've defined an AI 6-week learning plan on my link tree. These are not courses I've developed. These are all industry courses from people like PMI, from Pendo, from Scrum Alliance. And these are all free. They all allow you to generate a certification or a badge at the end. So you'll have a nice credential to go on your LinkedIn profile. Importantly, though, you'll have a better understanding of how to use these AI tools to get some value out of them. And that's about it. So I think the major takeaways from me are AI's here and it's here to stay. I don't think that genie's going back into the bottle anytime soon. It appears that we can get some really useful stuff out of it, which is nice. I'd really encourage you to run some experiments of your own. Try some things and then see what you can get out of this and see how you can improve your ways of working. And if you find any good use cases, if you find anything that looks useful or effective, please get in touch. I'd love to learn how other people are using these, and I'd really like to learn if there's any ways that I can get more out of these as well. I think that brings us right to the end.
ఏమేమి అర్జెంటా మీటింగ్ ఉన్నా
Naveen, if you wouldn't mind going on mute, that'd be good. Thank you. Okay, so these are the QR codes for everything I've discussed. On the left, you'll find the link to my link tree. Where the learning plan is, on the right, you'll find a link to a Google Doc that will have all the links to everything I've talked about in the session. I really hope it's been useful. I really hope there's something in there that'll help you get to grips with AI, some experiments that you can run. And fingers crossed this has been worth the time investment this evening for you guys. If anyone's got any questions, really happy to take them. But if not, I suppose we're going to run for it. It's over to you guys.
Oh, thank you very much, Dave. That was really, really interesting and informative session. I am conscious of time, so if anyone is struggling with the time, so they can definitely thank you very much for attending. But there are a few questions in the chat, so we can take that, Dave, if you have a couple of minutes.
Perfect.
Sure. So there's a question. Cybel Royce asked, are these generated using ChatGPT? Would you mind coming in and saying which applications were you talking about at that point? Cybel.
Yes, DJ. I'm referring to the retrospective, themes that we had created, sort of templates based on the real-time pictures of our team members. So what was that created using ChatGPT or some Mid-Journey? I think you were mentioning Mid-Journey.
These ones?
Yes. The Game of Thrones, and yeah, this one.
So these ones were done in ChatGPT. I gave the images of the leaders of the ELI group and asked them to create a Simpsons character, which was good. This was ChatGPT as well, I think, and I think this last one came from an earlier version of Midjourney. I'm surprised how poor this looks now compared to how fantastic I thought it was when I first saw it. The good news is if you try and do one today, it'll look 10 times better than this one does now. This is almost a year old now, so don't worry, yours will look a lot better than this one if you give it a try.
Yeah. Yeah, I've
But
seen
this
it.
requires a paid version, right?
Nope.
Because
No,
Image generation capabilities are very much enhanced right now, and I think most of them offer free of cost. There's a limit how many images you can generate, but it is free as of now.
okay, thanks. And this party rock is just you gave the human the command in a human language or natural language, and it created an app.
yeah. So I didn't want to do a live demo because we all know how live demos can go, but
Yeah.
let me try and show you basically what this looks like. So if you go to partyrock.aws, you'll come here. And it's just like using an LLM. We click start for free. Oh, it's going to ask us to sign in. God damn it. I'm not going to sign in on screen. Apologies. But this works just like this works just like an LLM. It'll give you an input box and say, what do you want to make? Just type in what you want to make and it'll spit something back here.
Will it generate a link which can be used later? Like if we create some sort of a glossary for Scrum and Agile as part of a Scrum mastering a new team. So will they be able to access it in a public domain?
So natively, all of your applications will be private. Once you're happy with it, you can publish it and then it becomes publicly available. If you're using a free account, publicly available means publicly available, so it's available to everyone. You would need to have some level of paid account if you wanted to restrict that just to your team. So again, mindful and think about the trade-offs there if you want to make something that's more ring-fenced.
That is awesome. Thank you.
I have a question from Ben. How are we going to bring in the generated retro in the whiteboard like Miro and Mural?
What do you mean?
Ben, would you mind explaining this if you are still here?
Yeah, thank you. No, I was just saying that if this is generated in ChatGPT, we copy and paste in Mural or Miro, or how we do that?
So this is, I'm conscious of the time, so if you need to run,
Yeah.
please. But to show you something really neat. So let's say we wanted a retrospective on any theme at all, I suppose, anything at all. We could create a discussion prompt for that. So let's say just like scoring a goal for Sunderland, what went well this sprint? So let's imagine I've just copied and pasted that from ChatGPT. You've now got a few options. You can either then generate your images within ChatGPT and copy and paste those over as well, or you'll notice there's the Miro AI button here as well, and we can use that to generate all sorts of different things. And I'm hoping I can find the image generation tool here somewhere. Yeah, here we go. And then I can probably select create an image for the sticky. Copy and paste that into here. And Miro can outsource some of your image generation capabilities as well. I did a video on LinkedIn a couple of months ago where I showed you can generate a new retrospective template in Miro in less than 5 minutes using this method. So if it's helpful, let me know and I'll try and
Yeah,
get that.
I saw that video. That was what I was thinking, that if this is out of Miro in ChatGPT, so is it the same thing, or is like that video that you did?
No, it's up to you. Whichever tool you think gives you the best results, use that tool. I'm a big believer in Miro, but Miro's not the only game in town. I would encourage you to experiment with as many of these as you can and see what's most effective for your specific use cases. I mean,
Dave, I was told that this AI capability is a paid version of Miro.
this can be, yeah. I'm not sure. I've been a paid user of Miro for a long time, so
Yeah, it's
not
not
sure
available otherwise.
version. Well, don't let that be a barrier. There are still tons of image generation tools available. If Miro's not the one for you, feel free to use something else, would be my recommendation. There's no reason you need to marry yourself to one of these tools.
Okay, I got it. Thank you.
Hope that was helpful, Ben.
Most definitely.
Thank you, Ben. I guess these were all questions in the chat. I think if conscious of time, just if anyone have anything else, otherwise I thank you very much. Thank you, Dave. Thank you everyone for attending this, and
Bye.
please contact us if you would like to talk about the conference or other meetups. Very quickly, if you find these meetups and newsletters or any of these events helpful and not helpful to you, please feel free to share your love. There is a QR code if you would like to donate. If you would like any small donation helps.